Hello, how you doing, YouTube? This is your girl Kendra coming back at you, aka KD, aka DJ Fish Grease. Oh yeah, that's Sticks. and I'm coming at you again this weekend to talk about feminism and the destruction of black womanhood. And some would argue that it should be feminism and the destruction of the black family. Well, you destroy the black family by destroying black womanhood and by destroying black women, because women are the gatekeepers of the family. That's our role. It's our duty. And the reason why I'm coming at it like this today is because that's one of the purposes of this channel. One of the purposes of this channel is to talk to the women. See, let me clarify something. The videos that I'm making and intend to make, I'm not talking to the men. They just happen to be studious and listening, which I greatly appreciate. Okay? But I'm talking to you, black woman. And I'm not even talking necessarily to the women in my age group, although you guys can listen because many of you are actively raising children. But I'm really kind of directing this at younger women too, because our womanhood is lost. We don't understand the power and the importance of our womanhood, and feminism, from the first wave down to what they're trying to say is the beginning of the fourth wave of feminism, has done nothing but destroy women. But I'm not concerned with any group of women other than my sisters, which are black women. The white women, the Asian women, they have their own communities to worry about them. So I'm not concerned about them, which is why I don't talk to them, or I don't talk to them. My message is not for them. My message is for you. And there are some of you out here that would listen to this video and say, well, she's a pick-me broad. Let's explore that a little bit before I get into the meat of what I want to really talk about. Let's explore the concept of pick-me. A pick-me, as the vernacular is circled around YouTube and other social media platforms, is directed typically from one black woman to another, and it is directed at usually a black woman who appears to stand up for or recognize or acknowledge the constructive criticism or empathize with the struggles and the plights of black men. Now, it's an interesting concept that one black woman would use or try to make the phrase pick me into a pejorative term to belittle and try to shame another black woman out of empathizing with or acknowledging or understanding black men and black men's issues as it pertains to themselves and to relationships with black women and the rest of the community. And furthermore, to define that phrase, pick me, they are basically saying that any black woman who empathizes with black men at all are only doing so as a sham. It's a con to say what black men want to hear in order to have the black men to pick them or pick me as a mate, which is an interesting concept because it shows how low thinking a lot of these black women are. That if they see another black woman standing with the men, that she's only doing so. She can't be genuine. She can't be genuine. She's only doing it to get dick or to get some favor from the men or just to have the men to pat her on the head and say good girl or whatever, to get some type of positive feedback or recognition from the men. My first question is, what's wrong with getting positive feedback and recognition from your own group of men? And my second issue with that is that this is how low you think. See, you don't think past your Hello Kitty. That's how you do. You con. You try to con black men by being superficially empathetic or superficially nice in order to try to persuade him to either give you sex or give you some of his resources, whatever that might be. Is usually money, or get him to take care of something for you, whether short term or long term, because you have no concept of standing with your man and that being a genuine thing or even a normal thing or a positive thing to do. You literally view that as something negative, and you use shaming language. Oh, she's just to pick me. I had to block a troll for that earlier today. And I suspect I'll have to block quite a few other trolls for the same reason. Black women are trolling me. The men aren't trolling me. They happen to agree with what I'm saying, but I'm not saying it to get them to agree. I'm saying it because it is the truth. And it's not the truth as I know it, because that's stupid. It's the truth. Okay? So, that in and of itself, that concept that it would be shameful, it is shameful to stand in a positive way with your black men and not stand apart from them as if they are your enemies, is something to be ashamed of, and it is something to be, you would use shaming language on another woman for doing that. That's crazy, and it speaks to the pathology of black people and specifically black women, because the men have their own pathologies, because as a group we have sets of pathologies anyway. So the men are not exempt. They have their own issues. Black men have their own issues that they need to straighten out. And I trust that those among them who have more sense will do the best that they can to disseminate important information and try to straighten it out. I've witnessed it on YouTube myself. So now who will straighten out the women? Because you guys, you women, don't want the men talking to you. You don't want them criticizing you, whether it's constructive or not. Whether all of their points are invalid as far as you're concerned. So it is really up to the women to get you, the rest of you, together, because we've protected you. We, who is we? The women who actually don't have contempt for black men, who don't have all of this, pent up aggression and sort of a hatred. It's a love-hate with black men. You want them, but it's abusive. It's emotionally abusive relationship. If I can't have you, nobody can. And you know what I'm saying? But as long as I got you, I'm going to treat you like crap. But if you go somewhere else, you shouldn't. I'm going to shame you into doing it. That kind of stuff. That's abusive behavior. But I'm not going to delve too far into that. We've protected you. the women who don't have that contempt, because we arrogantly believed that we could, with some understanding, reach you and get you to sort of see things a different way or behave a different way. But we've realized that that did not work. As a matter of fact, it was counterproductive and it was counterintuitive, because we protected you not because we thought you were right, but because we wanted to be the ones to help encourage you towards a different way. But you were hard-headed. You didn't listen to that. And then we ended up with egg on our faces, because it backfired tremendously. It exploded spectacularly in our faces, because I didn't never personally do it, but I include myself in the group because I include myself in the group of black women who don't have contempt for black men. I personally don't protect in my personal circle, my social circle. I don't protect the tomfoolery of anybody, let alone the women. I had one female that was in my direct line of influence, and I raised her, and she doesn't have that mentality. She doesn't carry that mentality because I didn't put it in her. If she picked up anything else, it wasn't picked up from me. But in any case, the collective of us protected the collective of you, because we wanted to see if we could impart something that would help you get over your issues with black men. But we really couldn't tolerate you either. So we started just distancing ourselves from you quietly. Okay, and I say quietly because we didn't make a big noise of that. We just sort of stepped back from you. But then when we stepped back from you, you became the representative of us. And we decreased in number and you increased in number. And I hope what I'm saying is being understood, because I'm trying to put it as plainly as I can. We allowed you to hide among our ranks. Again, not because we thought you were correct, but we wanted to correct you. It was arrogant of us to think that you could be corrected, because we didn't know how, and I'll speak for me, I didn't know how deep it ran. I didn't understand the depth of the contempt, because I didn't have contempt for black men. I didn't like hate my father and low key hate the men in my life. Like I've been blessed to have very good men in my life. My father, he had his faults, but he loved me and he showed that love, and he continues to do so. We have a very great relationship despite the tumult of my childhood. My older brother, I look up to him very much so. My younger brother was awesome. I ended up with a good husband, all black men who treated me awesomely. I have never experienced romantic heartbreak, and I'll be 40 in June. I have never experienced that. I have never had a man to break my heart. So I'm not jaded. And maybe that's why I can sort of see, it sort of makes me an outlier. Maybe that's why I can see things a little bit differently, because I'm not jaded against men. Like I haven't been hurt in a romantic setting by any man. Like my husband didn't break my heart. Like previous boyfriends, like they didn't do it. So I'm not coming from a jaded perspective. But in any case, I've spent 15 minutes already talking about not what I really wanted to talk about, sort of skirting the issue. So I'm going to sort of get into it because it calls for a slight historical timeline. Okay? And the timeline that I'm looking at, the first wave of feminism began in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it began with women's suffrage. For those of you who don't understand that term, it was the right to vote. Suffrage is the right to vote in this country, because for the longest, the only people who were deemed as people and worthy to vote were land-owning white men. If you were not a white man who owned some land, you were not represented in government and you were not allowed to vote. So that automatically cast aside all women and all other men of any other racial or ethnic group. So, some of the earliest feminists, black ones, were Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, and if I'm not mistaken, Madam C.J. Walker. Some of the more prominent, we know their names. Okay, we're familiar with their names, if not familiar with their story. And these were first wave feminists. And it's also where the train went off the tracks. It went off the tracks right there. As soon as it left the station, it went right off the tracks. It's never gotten back on. Because these women were black women born into slavery. Sojourner Truth was born into slavery. I believe the same was for Ida, if I'm not mistaken. Born into slavery, certainly born into the period just after chattel slavery ended, which was basically sharecropping, is basically still slavery. Okay? Because you still didn't have any human rights. Black people did not have any human rights. So now these women were abolitionists, but they were also feminists. So let's explore that a little bit. Because here you are, born into slavery, and to be an abolitionist was to go against slavery and its trappings and the inequality that aligned itself with the slavery and the racism. But they had a separate agenda attached to that, which was women's rights. And when I say women's rights, that not only meant black women, that meant white women. Now, the reason why that's interesting is because if you are fighting as a black woman against slavery and racism in America, doesn't that mean you as well, since you are black? Why a separate movement for you being a woman? And see, it is at that point where the women stood aside from the men, where the black women aligned themselves outside of the black man and aligned themselves with white women who began the feminist movement in the first place in order to have women's suffrage. Okay? They wanted the right to divorce. Okay? These are white women problems because the black women were born into slavery. So marriage and divorce was not something that they had free agency to do among each other. The plantation owner, the owner of the slaves, were actually, they owned everything, including breeding. Because remember, you can't think of it like people. You have to think of it like farm equipment or animals, okay? So if a farmer has cows and bulls on his animal farm, he doesn't want his cows mating with the bulls of another farmer's bulls, because then who does the calf belong to? This farmer or that farmer, right? So marriage between the slaves was managed. Now they would have secret relationships and stuff like that, but the slave owner paid no mind to that. The only ones he recognized were the marriages that he arranged, if he arranged them, because he wanted to manage how many children were born. So he did that by managing who could marry who. He castrated the majority of the men. This is how you had male workers, male house niggas. They were eunuchs. Because of course he's not going to have a strong buck male in his home that's not gelded. You don't bring a stud around a mare unless you want the stud to screw the mare. If you don't want the male horse to be excited by the mare, you have to bring a gelded horse in. Okay, because he's tame. A stud is not tame because he's not been castrated. He's not been gelded. He has all his testosterone and he has all of this will and spunk. He's an alpha. So he can't really be, it's hard to tame a stud. Okay, gelded horses are much easier to contend with because they've been gelded. Okay, so you have to think of it like animals, because they were thinking of us as animals. They were not thinking of us as human beings with free will and agency. Okay, so I'm saying all of that to say that rights of divorce and marriage were not in the hands of the slaves, male or female. So and only marriages that were really recorded and respected were marriages between white people. So the right to divorce is something that a white woman would have fought for. A black woman during that time, especially one that it was either born in slavery or lived through the transition between chattel slavery and non-chattel slavery, she would not have had that agency anyway, because her family and her marriage and stuff were not recognized. They could be broken at any time, depending upon what was more beneficial to the slave owner. Okay, so these are women's suffrage and the right to divorce. These are white women problems, especially during that time, because they didn't have any rights under their men. They didn't have the right to vote or own anything. They couldn't own anything that their husband didn't own. If she came into some money that she inherited from her family, whoever she got married to, he inherited that money. She was not allowed to maintain that in very few instances. So she didn't have any rights. So this is white women stuff. You, black woman, had nothing to do with that. Yet you aligned yourself quite prominently with that fight. Okay? And feminism co-opted the fight against racial injustice and slavery as well. So in each wave of feminism, you'll understand that it co-opts other more important civil rights movements. The second wave of feminism, which took place along in the 60s and the 70s, okay, co-opted civil rights, the civil rights movement, and it is abortion rights, and then that whole sexual freedom thing. So this is really where women lost their femininity. In that second wave of feminism, women lost touch with what it was that made them women, that makes women powerful. Okay, and they began to compete with men, or try to. Now, Interestingly, before I move along to the third wave of feminism, the second wave of feminism was very potent and it was very important because during the 60s and 70s in America, that was a very tumultuous time politically and socially for America. What was happening in the 60s? In the 60s, the Vietnam War was happening. In the 60s, the Civil Rights Movement was happening. JFK was assassinated. Malcolm X was assassinated in 65. MLK was assassinated in 68. Okay. Now, what's happening in Black America at this time? Now, many of our men were drafted to go to Vietnam. Okay. Which is where you get the famous where Muhammad Ali refused to go. He refused. That was the war he was refusing to go to. He was refusing the draft to go to the Vietnam War, where he basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, ain't no Viet Cong never called me nigga. So why am I going to fight a war with some people that I don't have anything against, only to come back to a country, to the same country that I just risked my life for, and they treat me, I'm not even human here. I'm a subhuman here. I'm not even a man here. So that was his premise for not, that was his reasoning for not fighting in a nutshell. Okay. So now, in the early 70s, the Vietnam War officially ended, I believe, in like 75. And if BGS Ibmore is listening to this, or Cerulean Gray listens to this, they'll probably correct me if I have the date wrong. But the early 70s marked the beginning of withdrawal, in part, from Vietnam, although they were still running missions up until, I believe, 1975. Okay. So now, when we have all of this feminism going on and this free sex, the men have been shipped off to war. So now that leaves the women having to find a way to provide for their families. And one of the ways to survive that and provide for their families, because the job market at that time was not as open to women as it is now. Okay, it was getting there, they were doing it, but it wasn't as widespread, especially for black women. You weren't getting into a whole lot of things. But see, it was opening up because of the first wave of feminism, right? Which was something that white women started. Okay, stay with me. All right. Black women glommed on to a white woman's fight. Okay. When the job market began to open, because see, white men are being shipped off too. Okay. But the difference is white people are the dominant society and we're not. So she's going to be taken care of and you're not. Okay? So the welfare programs expanded during that time to compensate for the many men who had left for war, many of which did not come back. All right. Now, a couple of other things were happening in the beginning through the 70s also that are quite important because it ruined the black community. The influx of opioids. Okay. See, people remember the crack era, but that was the like the 80s and the 90s. The 70s was the opioid crisis for black people. So it wasn't a crisis. Okay? It was popular then to have things like heroin, morphine, things of that nature in the neighborhood, okay? Which coincided with President Nixon running on a platform of law and order, okay? Which worked to criminalize the drug epidemic in the black community. Bear with me, because I'm connecting these things for you, or I'm trying to. Now, they began to withdraw from Vietnam during the early to mid 70s. Okay, so the men who had come back from war, these are war vets, and they've come back in a couple of different conditions. Some of them, most of them, if not all of them, suffered from PTSD, one level or another, some probably more than others. Many came back physically handicapped or maimed, so they were unable to procure gainful employment. I'm talking just about black men. Unable to procure gainful employment, many of them, either for physical disability or the PTSD and trauma was too much for them mentally, and they could not readjust back into civilian society. Okay. Some of them who did were found that the job market was not open to them. It had been opened for the black woman, but not to them. Which is important because that coincides with the flood of drugs into the black community, which interestingly enough coincides also with what was happening in pop culture and media. The 70s was the explosion of the blaxploitation movies. Superfly came out in 1972. One of the better made and well known of the blaxploitation movies. And what was Superfly? Superfly was a story of a pimp and a drug dealer, priest. By the way, Curtis Mayfield did one of the best movie soundtracks in Hollywood to date, but I digress. If it wasn't a copyright strike, I would have that playing. But anyway, we know the influence of popular media. So the media was showing the influx of drugs and what that would do to the black community. Because you have these black men who come back from a war, unable to get gainful employment in the numbers that they would need in order to be the providers and heads of their households. So they come back to find that they have been financially castrated. They are financially obsolete to the black woman and her children, because the job market is open to her, it is not open to him. Okay. So also, since I mentioned Nixon and his Law and Order platform, that the rate of imprisonment spiked for black men because they had criminalized the drug trade in the black community, and for not only for dealers but for users as well. Okay. So possession charges, even if was not possession with the intent to distribute, i.e. a drug dealer, if you had enough because you were a user, you were using smack. Okay. Now the heroin addiction was to help self-treat the PTSD that the men were suffering from. Okay. I want you to bear with me, because all of these things take place, they converged. Okay, it was a perfect storm of fuckery that destroyed us. Okay, as recently as the 1970s. So once the black man found himself financially obsolete, he can't get gainful employment, Not really. I mean, a few, yes, but not in mass. So he turns to the only thing that he can get his hands on in the neighborhood, which is the drugs. So he's either taking the drugs to cope or he's selling the drugs to get money. Okay? And we have the popular media at that time pushing this narrative with blaxploitation. The men were portrayed as pimps and drug dealers. The women were whores, and they were defiant against their men. Okay? They were quote unquote strong black women, which I spoke about in the other video. They were hard-headed. They were portrayed as these flip-mouth, violent, sexually promiscuous women who no longer valued long-term relationships or marriage. They valued their independence more than they valued the concept of family. They were out there trying to make money along with the guys, doing practically the same thing as best they could. Okay? So that is what's happening in popular media. Okay? This all should sound familiar to you, even if you're young. Okay? So that actually played out in our communities. Who's loudmouth and flip and sexually promiscuous and doesn't care about marriage? Who? Black women of today. They're defiant against their men. They don't want their men telling them anything. And they attempt to compete with men on men's platforms and men's standings. And this is what I really want to talk about. Because the feminist movement, along with everything that I just said, and this was a really condensed crash course of it all, what ended up happening was that they shamed you for being feminine, taking care of your house, raising your children, taking care of your husband, taking care of your family, imparting wisdom among, and being a true matriarch in your family. And when I say matriarch, I'm not meaning in the sense that you stand over your men. I mean in the sense of how, Big Mama was in some cases. She was the one you went to. She taught the women. She taught the women what she understood of womanhood. Now that was not perfect, because there are a lot of grandmothers of my time who they was full of bullshit too. So let's not get that twisted. But at least they did attempt to, at some point, give something to the women, or try to pull the women's coattails and say, hey, that's not how women do, or that's not how women's supposed to act. But that's all gone. That is all gone now, because grandma is my age. And grandma thinks she still got it. Which she might, because she not very old. 40 is not old. My grandma was 60, 70 something. My grandma was in her 70s when she died. You know what I'm saying? So grandmas, you're not even waiting until you like in your 60s to be a grandma. You're a grandma in your 30s. In your mid to late 30s, early 40s, you're already a grandmother. So when you have a situation like this, how all of those things converged, you have a situation where a woman is no longer a woman. She is detached from the source of her womanhood. When they tell you that you don't need to be barefoot and pregnant, that's for dumb, stupid women. You know, getting married and wasting your time, you wasting your youth on marriage and children. You should be out pursuing whatever other pursuits you want, and don't even think about marriage and stuff like that. We're in the age of free sex. You don't have to get married to have sex and have children. You can do what you want. And as a matter of fact, we don't want children, so we're going to fight for the right to abort at any time for any reason. And a lot of women use abortion as birth control. Black women have some of the highest rates of abortion among any other race of women in America. We kill way more babies than we have. And here I was a woman who wanted children and couldn't have them. And then you all are out there just spitting out babies and you don't even care about them. You care nothing to raise them right. You don't provide a stable household or family, their father, or nothing. You have them, you willy-nilly, you kill them. Whether that's an abortion killing, sometimes the craziest among y'all wait till they born and you just abuse them and you kill them. That's the other dirty little secret that y'all don't want nobody to know, how you really treat them kids. I'm gonna get on that in another video. But to continue the thought, you have all of this high rate of abortion, all of this free sex that you're giving out. I was among the last. I'm a Gen Xer. I was one of the last Mohicans to be told that being promiscuous was unbecoming of a woman. That women did not give their bodies out to anybody at any time for any reason, just all willy-nilly. That was whore behavior. Whores didn't have any discretion about who they were having sex with and for what and when and where. But women who valued their bodies, you tried to hold your virginity as long as you could, and then you're supposed to make a good decision about who you're laying up with. You can't just lay up with a guy and you don't even know him. Like, I was raised like that. Like, my childhood wasn't much, but I was taught that much, that women who of value and of substance, they didn't just give their Hello Kitty to anybody, because I was also taught that if you're really super free with your body, men don't respect that. They'll take it because they're men and are you giving it. But respect you? Not really. They don't really want to do that because you're not respecting you. If they could get sex with you within a few hours of meeting you, the reason why they don't respect it and don't want to carry on other longer, more serious relationship with you is because if you give it to me that easy, you give it to the next man like that. It didn't take much for me to get you in bed. You don't even know my last name. In some cases, you don't even know my real name. I gave you my street name, the name my nickname, the name my boys call me. And so if you will do that with me, you will do that with anybody. Matter of fact, I'm gonna pass you around because that's what I think of you. So I was raised that you don't do that. I was raised real old school. My parents and stuff and my extended family are old, so they was really old school. Now you can't tell because this is all one continuous video, but I got up and I lost my train of thought. But the grease is still hot, so we gonna cook some more. Now, getting back to the things that help destroy your womanhood, black woman, and you let it happen. Blame your ancestors. Blame those women, the Ida B. Wellses and the Sojourner Truths. Blame them. Don't celebrate them, blame them. I'm not going to say they didn't do anything good, but they messed up royally. They fucked up when they aligned themselves with feminism. Because that feminism never helped you. It never helped you. It hurt us. It did not help us at all. It was a plan and you fell for it. In the words of Brother Malcolm, you've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked. Run amok. They got you. You got gagged. And you still getting gagged. Because you still in 2018 have not opened your eyes. You still align yourself with feminism. And you do so at the peril of not only your children and the man that you hate so much, but of yourself. Who do you think is gonna be your support system? How are you going to survive without the other half of the friggin' race? They told you that you didn't need a man, and you bought it. Not bothering to look and see the strings of the puppet master guiding it all. You didn't bother to look. You're selfish. You only thought about today. You don't think about tomorrow. You only think about right now. You don't think about the future at all. You have bought this system of white zaddy catering to you. Well, we're the most educated of the black community, the black women. But what has it gained you? You tell me, how has that helped the black community when your young boys can't make it out of school? They get up to high school and they can't read at that level. They're juniors and seniors reading at 5th and 4th grade levels. How do you let that happen? How do you let it happen? The white woman is not in this predicament, mind you. She used you. You've been had. You ought to feel sick. You ought to feel sick to your stomach. Then she turned around and told you wasn't pretty enough. You need to try to look like me, and you bought that. So you tried to straighten your hair. And you put these weaves and wigs on to such an extent that you would not be caught dead outside without that wig or without that sew-in. And you don't even have the good decency to wear a wig or sew-in that look like your hair. You would get some platinum blonde shit and put it in your hair straight as a board. You look stupid. This is why your man don't respect you. This is why your children don't respect you. Because you've lost all touch with what it is to be a woman. You cannot compete with men in men's spaces. A man's strength is not your strength. It doesn't belong to you. Stop thieving it. You have your own, but you don't recognize it and you don't value it. Us as black people in this country are dealing with a demon that is hell bent on destroying us on all three planes of existence: physical, mental, spiritual. Men dominate the physical realm. Men dominate the physical strength. They represent it. That is their wheelhouse. How do you destroy physical strength? You overtake it by a stronger physical force, which is why they will outright kill them. They'll shoot them dead in the street. Because they represent the physical realm of existence for black people. They jail him. They beat him. They destroy on the emotional and mental level by destroying you. Notice they don't kill you in the street like that. They've destroyed you another way. The spiritual is the wheelhouse of the female. How dare you not tap into your female energy? Why are you trying to sit there and say that you can do anything a man can do? That is nonsense. You have traded in your womanhood for an empty CNA license, a sew-in, and a Honda Accord. And a Hyundai Elantra. That's what you've sold it for. And child support. And a SNAP card. You've traded in your entire race for pittings. For nothing. Nothing. You don't value your womb. You don't care who enters it. You don't care who plants seeds in it. You don't care what seed grow out of it. As long as you get to snap a selfie on Instagram and twerk, you're okay. We queens. No, the fuck you not. We used to be the mother of civilization. But we lost that mantle a long time ago. Because we don't live up to it. You got white girls on Instagram and Facebook trying to talk black or what they consider to be hood rat and ratchet. They trying to twerk. They're following us in our foolishness. What do you think they would do if we were to stop being foolish and be women? Then what would they do? Then what would they do? They follow you because it's they twerking and all because it's a mockery. It's funny to them. You're a caricature. You're a character. You're false, fake, imaginary, fictional. You're not real. You're not real. That's why they do it. Because it's funny. It's a joke. You're a joke. You're the laughing stock among women. And you think it's cute. That's the sad part. You think the shit is cute. You think it's cute to be twerking on Instagram and the background of your house is just in squalor. You think that shit is sexy and cute. And it's not. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic is what it is. You have traded in all of your womanhood to the point where you don't even know what it is anymore. You can't even recognize it anymore. Somebody asks you what kind of woman you are, you get to running off about what kind of job you got and what kind of car you drive and how much your bundles cost. And I'm a boss bitch. No, you're not. A bitch maybe, but not a boss. I'm a bad bitch. Define that. You don't hear no other women talking that foolishness but you. And then you want to get mad at another woman for pulling the coattail, for pulling the veil off of the bullshit. I'm snatching your edges out. I'm not even trying to be nice about this shit. Every day you wake up hating yourself. You put on fake lashes, fake hair, you pile on makeup so that you don't have to look at who you really are in the mirror. Because you hate your nappy hair, and you hate your skin tone, and you hate your lips. Then you get mad when white women clown you. And it ain't so much, because I don't give a fuck what they think about me. Because she's not my standard. A white woman is not my standard of anything. These the same bitches will fuck a dog. That's not my standard of anything. That's your standard. You trying to live up to her. That's why you get so mad when a black man just go ahead and skip you and pick her. Why get a fake version when you could get the real thing? Would you buy a pair of fake Jordans when you can afford real Jordans? Hell no. You think looking like her is a come up. That's what you think. You think fucking a white man is a come up. You can't even accept yourself. You have children and pawn them off to somebody. You leave them. The worst of you will kill them, or you will let somebody molest them. And you won't even care. You won't even think twice about the situation. You won't try to help them or anything. You will protect the person who molested them before you protect your child. When your womanhood has degraded to such an extent where you don't even have proper mothering instincts, you can't call yourself a woman. I'm a woman. You don't share space with me. You're a female. You running around here doing slut walks with Amber Rose with your dumb ass. A slut walk. You should not even want to be called a slut. When I was coming up, a slut was a shameful woman. But you don't have any shame. You don't have any modesty. All you have is a flip mouth and a weave. That's what you got. And you think going to school and getting an education and getting a little job that pay you more than a few little pennies it makes you a good woman. No, it don't. Cause you still got that fucked up mentality. You a strong black woman, but you can't even wear your natural fucking hair. The hair that grew out of your fucking head. That's unique to you. You're not a queen. You a pauper is what you are. How dare you not understand your womanhood or seek to find out? How dare you try to make light of what it is to be a mother, what it is to be a wife, what it is to take care of your family. You wasting your young years with it. That's when you supposed to do it. You're supposed to get the family and all that when you young. When your body can hold it. When you're at the peak of your physical self. You at the height of your beauty. You get married to a man, and if you're a good wife and stuff like that, your beauty can fade, and his love for you won't fade. Because by that time, he's more invested in you. He's invested in you past his penis. He done invested his mind, and he done invested his heart now. That's if you're a good wife and a good mother. You're responsible for rearing an entire generation that come after you. Look at what you've wrought. Look around. You effeminize your boys. You running around here sticking up for transgender women. That's your replacement, you damn fool. Or is she trying to be? And you can't afford to cheer on your replacement. Let me tell you, you're not in a position to do that. That's just like a starting quarterback rooting on the backup quarterback. He better not cheer too hard. If he ain't Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady in his heyday, he better not cheer too hard to replace him. You done bought hook, line, and sinker into this feminist thing so much so that you have accepted the effeminization of your boys and the masculation of your girls. A complete gender swap. So the girls are hard and the boys are soft. And you don't want him to have his dad so that his dad can teach him about being masculine. But you would rather run around here, like I said, you think about today only. Can you get some red bottoms? Bitch, you live in the hood. You don't deserve red bottoms because you can't pay for them. But you want some dude to do it. And y'all some dumb assholes too. You don't even hold good enough. You don't even know when you won. That old ugly asshole Black China, she ugly too. Married Rob Kardashian. Now, Rob is a ignorant little something. But you got the bag, stupid bitch. You hold your way to a man that's got some real money. and you couldn't even stop hoeing publicly in order to maintain a lifestyle that you had married into. He was stupid enough to marry you. You might as well stay. Now he get what he get for marrying a hoe. But as a hoe, this bitch was too dumb to stop hoeing public. She couldn't stop hoeing publicly until he divorced her. This is stupid. So y'all dumb on top of everything else. You don't even in your fuckery, you don't even do that right. But you keep following up behind these white women with this feminist bullshit. Ask Amber Phillips how that worked out. All of that caping for white women and feminism, and it was a white woman that called the police on her ass and wouldn't even look at the bitch after she had did it. And she called her white zaddy on that bitch, on that black ass bitch, and he hustled her black fat ass off of that plane or wherever the hell they was at. And it was good for her. You reap what you sow. But I've been running my mouth long enough. I'll hit y'all up on the next one. I guess I should promote now. If you like this content, you can like, share, and subscribe. And speaking of subscribing, I would like to thank all of my subscribers. It's up to nearly 400, and I haven't been here a week. And I owe that to the Angry Man who promoted me. I owe that to Torian Rain Reloaded, who gave me a shout out, and plenty of subscribers came from him. And of course, BGS Ibmore, who mirrored my video Ignoring Black Men Part 1 on his channel. It got so many views and I got so many subscribers. I never could have gotten that without the help of my brothers who selflessly promoted me. They did not have to do that, and I'm very, very thankful for all of you who listen, who like it, who thumbs up, who comment. You know, the comments really, especially. I love reading comments. I'm addicted to reading comments. So that's like my thing. Like, since the channel is new to me, like, I'm addicted to, refreshing it and see how many people. It's crazy. It'll wear off. But I would like to shout out those three. I really, really thank you, and I thank you for all the support. Everybody, the Angry Man Nation, everybody who's supporting and who will support. Thank you so very much for the warm reception. I feel the love. I feel, I feel it through the interwebs. So I really, really appreciate that. I'm very humbled by it. Also, how can I forget the Prophet of Thought series? Shouted me out when I was on his show last night with me and the other 3 unicorns. So you should actually check them out every Thursday. Every Thursday evening, it's at 8:30 Central. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for real. And I will catch you on the next video.